All right. What's good, y'all? Appreciate you joining me for another live stream, or if you're watching on YouTube, another YouTube video. This is going to be a little bit of a different, quick video here. A little bit of a different type of stream. And essentially, what I want to do, kind of just briefly and quickly here is, I wanted to just make a quick video, kind of just outlining and overviewing all the teams in the league currently, obviously within 2K26, following the trade deadline. So when I'm recording this, it's currently Saturday, February 7th, of course, 2026, and the trade deadline just happened this past Thursday, February 5th. There were a ton of moving parts, and obviously I've kind of had a couple days now to think about those moving parts and kind of reconsider, rosters as it relates to 2K26, specifically for Play Now Online. And the trade deadline and following some of the moves that happened, that definitely changes a lot of different dynamics, not only for, the teams that made trades, but specifically for like the teams that I tend to use in Play Now Online in 2K26. So I thought it would be beneficial just to kind of talk through like the rosters as they are following the trade deadline. I think there's a lot of opportunities to, maybe start using different teams and kind of, find new roles for players on teams following, the many different transactions that happened during the trade deadline. So let's just kind of jump in here to the roster. And again, really just kind of want to look through each team. Not every team changed, obviously. Not every team, made moves. Most did, it seems. And there were a ton of big trades, obviously, in the trade deadline here. So for Philly, really nothing changed for the Sixers. They're largely going to remain the same. Paul George currently hurt. That's the only thing to really take into consideration with them. But everything is really the same for Philly. The Bucks largely are the same. I actually do think that the Bucks improved during the trade deadline here in 2026, and the reason that I say that is I really like the addition of Ousmane Dieng or Jang for them. He's a guy that I've kind of had my eye on for a few years now, especially going back to when he was on the Thunder. I mean, he's 6'9" and pretty versatile, could shoot, and you see he gets like the skilled stretch shot erasing name. So I really like the Bucks adding him. I think that kind of just elevates them. And I'm planning to still use the Bucks pretty soon here, even with Giannis being hurt currently and not playing. I really like the Bucks, and it's so valuable having Turner and Portis together. One of the videos that I made and posted on YouTube for the best teams to use in Play Now Online for 2K26 series was on the Bucks. And again, one of the points that I made a lot when using the Bucks was I like what they bring to the table aside from Giannis, and that starts with Turner and Portis, two kind of versatile stretch bigs. But I like what they did with adding Ousmane Dieng. So I think that's valuable there. Bulls largely the same. I think they made some interesting moves, and I really like them adding Leonard Miller. This is a guy I think that's slept on a ton in 2K26 and just in 2K in general and for Play Now Online. I'm going to come back to him whenever we get to the Timberwolves, but I don't think the dynamic changed a ton for the Bulls. Now going on to the Cavs, I think that my main takeaway for the Cavs is they really have kind of the exact same dynamic, but just a little bit better with adding James Harden. Essentially to replace Darius Garland, so they get really even more dynamic in their backcourt. You would think. We'll see how it plays out in real life, but 2K wise, I think this is a little bit better for the Cavs. Of course, their injury stuff aside, I really like what Cleveland does bring to the table. I think a guy to kind of not overlook is Dean Wade. He's of course a shooting stretch big, but he can really get to the rim and finish, and pretty versatile finisher. So I like what the Cavs did. Again, really it's the same dynamic for Cleveland still, but just a little bit better altogether. I think that the Celtics, they're probably a team to avoid still, even with them, not having Tatum. But I do think that they made a sneaky good transaction in getting Nikola Vucevic. I like them, adding to their front court by getting a big who can shoot and is pretty skilled altogether. So I've been, really bearish to say, or to so to speak, on the Celtics as it comes to 2026. This doesn't really change that, but again, a sneaky good addition for Nikola Vucevic. The Clippers, I wasn't really crazy to begin with about them, and following what they did with with moving James Harden. They also moved Zubac. I'm fine with them moving Zubac, but I just don't think that they really got that much better per se. They do still have Brook Lopez. That's valuable to have the shooting big, but I haven't been crazy about the Clippers for whatever reason in 2K26. So I don't think anything, changed that. Certainly not with the 2026 trade deadline. Grizzlies, I'm going to skip over because I don't think that they really, got much better. I don't think their dynamic changed all that much. Now, the Hawks are a team that I think we need to spend a little bit of time on here, because this is just one of the most fascinating seasons I think that you'll find in terms of just the moving parts and all the different players and pieces that they have in play. This is where it's going to be. This is where it's settling after the dust has settled for them. Obviously, Trae Young was traded earlier in the year, and now they have moved Porzingis too. So the Hawks were one of the teams that I made a YouTube video on for the best teams to use in Play Now Online series, and I'm still a believer in Atlanta. I think you're going to see me using the Hawks in the future. It's valuable for them to still have Onyeka Okongwu and another big who can come off the bench in Jock Landale and shoot and stretch the floor. I don't think Jock Landale is like an incredible big by any means, but he's more than serviceable, I think, from how he's looking here. So, and they have still all the other core pieces that kind of made me fall in love with the Hawks a little bit. They have just a phenomenal, pick and slip four-man in Jalen Johnson, and a lot of good 3-and-D guys just across the board in Reese Shea, Dyson Daniels, and Alexander Walker. And they did add, of course, Corey Kispert in the Trae Young trade. And Asanul is still there. He's a guy that I really like a lot for them, kind of tucked down a little bit, lower in their roster. So I'm still a believer, and it really has been just a crazy season, trade-wise for the Hawks. But I'll be interested to see, what happens for them in real life. But I'm still a believer in terms of 2K. The Heat are not one of the core teams that I use in or for Play Now Online, but they are a team that I really like and that I have used. They didn't make really any changes, in for the trade deadline this year. And before I comment further on the Heat, what I want to say is my core teams, that I've been using for a while now in 2K26 for Play Now Online that I kind of cycle through are the Spurs, the Hawks, the Bucks, the 76ers, and then the Timberwolves and the Mavericks. So we'll definitely touch on the Timberwolves and the Mavericks, of course, following the trade deadline, as both of those teams made moves. But the Heat are kind of like right there. They would be, I think, the 7th team that I would prefer to use, I think. I really like the Heat. I like the combination of Adebayo and Kel Ware in the front court. That's super valuable. I also really like the Wizards. We'll talk a lot more about them, obviously, when we get there. But I like the Heat. They didn't make any changes, but I still really like them, so I wanted to point that out here in this video. The Hornets, not a bad team at all. I liked using them. I played a game with them, I think, a couple weeks ago for kind of a grind YouTube and Twitch series that I've been making to grind the well-traveled accolade for Play Now Online, which is winning a game with all 30 NBA teams. Obviously, I use the Hornets, or I have used the Hornets and won with the Hornets so far. And just as a side note, 21 out of 30 teams checked off, so keep checking back on Twitch and YouTube for more videos for the well-traveled grind. But the Hornets are a pretty good team. They really didn't make any changes. I don't super think that they had to. They did acquire Kobe White, so I guess that would be, the one change there. But This is another guy. I do not know how to pronounce his first name. Uh, Tijane Salon. This guy's a good player. He's listed as a stretch four cleaner. He can be played at the five. I think he can really shoot. Pretty athletic, pretty versatile in defense, and he can board up. So Hornets didn't make any changes, but I kind of like them. Not one of my core teams, but not bad at all. And now the Jazz. Now, the Utah Jazz are really exciting, I think, in my eyes here, following, what they did at the deadline. So obviously they acquired Jaren Jackson Jr. And, I think Jaren Jackson has kind of had his shortcomings in terms of, a real life big. But when it comes to 2K, he's really solid. And especially when you add Jaren Jackson Jr. into the Jazz dynamic, that's pretty intriguing in my eyes. So you may see me using the Jazz a little bit more once I kind of finish going through all of the teams here and breaking down, just some of the changes that were made in the trade deadline, following the trade deadline. I'm going to give 3 teams that I think I'm going to consider adding into my core 6 teams to use. So I'll circle back and and kind of mention 3 teams at the end of all of this. But the Jazz are definitely going to be one to get some consideration because, again, I really like them adding a tall, stretch, versatile big in Jaren Jackson Jr. Again, his rebounding isn't great, but they've got Nurkic and Markkanen that you can kind of pair, alongside him. So that's really exciting. And when you consider some of the other versatility that they have in Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Sensabaugh is a guy who's not bad, Collier, Filipowski, and Kevin Love too. You can't forget him. There's just a ton of bigs and a lot that you can do size-wise to space the floor for the Jazz. So I'm going to probably keep them in mind, and again, I may use them a little bit more. Now, the Kings are a team that I do like. I like a lot following the trade deadline. I think they made, a few subtle moves. I guess really one, or maybe just one subtle move, but that's the acquisition of DeAndre Hunter. I think that this is kind of what the Kings have been missing in some ways. I don't think the Kings really, for the last few years, if not longer, have had a viable 3-and-D player that can really defend and just complement some of their other star players, like in Sabonis and DeRozan and Levine. So I like the addition of DeAndre Hunter. I like the Kings when I use them for the well-traveled grind, and I may consider using them a little bit more too. I wish that they had a little bit more of a dominant interior defensive big, but they've got some guys that can do a lot of things in Sabonis, Achua, and then even Raynaud and Drew Eubanks too off of the bench. So I'm intrigued by the Kings. I like them a lot, and I really like the addition of DeAndre Hunter. Don't sleep on them. The Knicks really didn't change anything. Solid team altogether, but there's really no moves to dissect, necessarily for the Knicks, I don't think. Lakers, kind of, they fit the same bill there. Really didn't make any changes. Obviously, we know they're going to be a contender, but really no trade deadline moves, no new dynamics necessarily. Same goes for the Magic, too. Magic are a really tall, versatile squad altogether, but I don't think that they, really made any changes. They're definitely a team that I think you should consider using if you're looking for a team that just has a lot of tall, versatile guys and pretty good depth. But no real news here, changes-wise for the Magic. So that'll take us to the Mavs, which this is, of course, another team that is incredibly intriguing and probably for the wrong reasons when it comes to the deadline here. Of course, they moved Anthony Davis to the Wizards. That's where AD ended up. And it's almost hard to, to kind of describe how I feel about the Mavericks right now. So again, like I said, the Mavericks were, and I think still are, one of the core 6 teams that I use in playing out online. I want to be very clear about that. Those are one of the, I still really like the Mavericks. But I think the best way to describe, kind of the changes that we saw Dallas make at the deadline were they're a little bit worse off now, but I think they're still viable in terms of a 2K team. And here's why. Aside from anything in their front court and aside from Anthony Davis, what they can do in the backcourt is really unique and really valuable. I think that having the number of 3 and D players that the Mavericks have can't be overlooked. You can't find that really with all teams, or it's not like all teams have this level of 3 and D talent. And what I mean by that is I think Max Christie is a guy who is really ascended, and I think he can even be played at the 1. Same goes for PJ Washington. And then you've also got Clay. Look at this perimeter defense in here, and this is versatile defense too, with PJ being able to defend big and rebound a little bit. So these 3 guys are really, really solid 1 through 3. And then obviously losing AD hurts a ton. I think having AD to kind of play the 5 and round out the lineup with Cooper Flagg, and then these other 3 guys, and Clay, PJ, and Christie, having AD to round things out was tremendously valuable, and that was one of the reasons why I really, really liked the Mavericks before they traded Davis away. So I think the Mavericks are a little bit worse off now, but I am also still a believer in Dallas, and I think that they can do a lot of really good things. I played with the Wizards a number of times because I'm super intrigued by Alexander Sarr. And Marvin Bagley was, of course, on the Wizards. He's who the Mavericks got in return, I believe, for Davis. And also Chris Middleton. That can't be overlooked, too. Now they've got Chris Middleton also. This isn't... Middleton's not a big, but Middleton's a proven winner. Someone who's still a pretty good player and pretty good defender altogether. So that'll definitely add depth to the Mavericks 1 through 3. But I think Bagley is a solid 5-man, and the Mavericks do still have Dwight Powell, a shooting big who can hold his own somewhat. So, again, I definitely think that the Mavericks are worse off, but I think they're still viable, and I think you can win a lot of games still using the Mavericks in 2K. So, nothing to freak out about there. I still plan to make the video on the best teams to use and play now online on the Mavericks, so that'll be coming to the 2K Fiduciary in the future on YouTube. Nets, really nothing to say here. I do like the acquisition of Josh Minot, or Minot. I don't fully know how to pronounce that, but this is someone that I realize is a pretty solid 2K player. So I like this acquisition for the Nets, but really nothing to write home about for them. Same goes for the Nuggets. I don't think the Nuggets made really any significant changes. Obviously, you've got Jokic, and he's going to make the Nuggets viable always, but I've never been, just not this year, I haven't been crazy about what's around Jokic, so I think that's kind of why they aren't one of the teams that I really prioritize using a ton. Pacers made some changes, but just with the injuries that they have, obviously Halliburton and Obi Toppin still hurt. I don't think you can use the Pacers, and I don't use the Pacers. They acquired Zubac, but I would like to see them get a big who can stretch the floor, but that's always kind of just my preference in terms of the dynamic of a team and of a front court. So would have loved to see the Pacers make another change to get a more viable shooting big, but it is what it is. I don't think that was going to move the needle for them anyway. Pelicans, I don't think there's really anything to write home about here. Pelicans haven't been a team that I use really overly consistently. They've got some good pieces, of course, in Zion, and some solid 3 and D players, behind him, but nothing too significant here, I don't think. The Pistons have been a team, obviously, that have really made headlines just in terms of their turnaround over the last few years. But I'm not crazy about them in terms of a 2K team. I think that having Jalen Duren as their main 5 is really useful for them, but he's not a big who can stretch the floor, and I think that does present some challenges 2K-wise. So beyond that, they do still have Isaiah Stewart, but really no significant changes per se, other than acquiring Kevin Huerter, if I'm not mistaken. The Raptors, pretty similar. Again, Raptors haven't been a team that I've been using necessarily, or really I haven't used them at all yet in Plain Hell Online, so nothing to write home about here. Rockets, still really good. Not much else you can say about Houston. Really like the Rockets still, and that's going to be a team that I think is always really viable to use with their versatility, offensive firepower. Would like to see them have a little bit more interior defense, the Rockets. But nothing to write home about in terms of the trade deadline. Still a really good team altogether. Of course, the Spurs didn't make any changes, and I don't think they needed to. They will, as long as they have Wemby, they're going to be a team that really a ton of people use, myself included, me being one of them. I really appreciate what the Spurs have behind Wemby as well. I like them having a guy like Kelly Olynyk who can shoot, and they've just really done a good job building around Wemby altogether. So they will continue to be a core team, obviously, that I use in Play Now Online. The Suns will not. I don't know about Phoenix right now. I'm not sure about the state of the Suns, but I don't think they made really any changes in terms of the deadline. They may have acquired Cole Anthony. I don't know if that was a deadline deal or not, but this was definitely a midseason acquisition because I know he was on the Bucks at one point. Shout out to Jordan Goodwin, St. Louis area, Belleville native, but nothing crazy here for the Suns. So moving on to the Thunder, obviously kind of been in the headlines. The Thunder acquired Jared McCain. I don't think it's anything that really moves the needle for them that much. Certainly not in terms of 2K. You're not going to see very many people using them without Shea and Jalen Williams. And the Thunder just have not been a team that I have used really all that much. I may be a little bit biased because I do claim the Pacers as my favorite team in 2K26. So I may be a little bit biased and still salty about how last year's finals went. But nothing crazy here, trade deadline-wise. No new dynamics, really, for the Thunder. And now we're getting on the home stretch here. We're definitely on the home stretch. And like I mentioned, the Timberwolves, I've got some more thoughts. Because the Timberwolves were, and I think they still are. Matter of fact, I know they still are one of my core 6 teams that I use in Play Now Online. Obviously, I don't have a video made yet on the 2K Fiduciary on YouTube, but I do still plan to make a video on the Timberwolves as well in the best teams to use in Play Now Online series. So that'll be coming. Really, my thought on the T-Wolves is it's kind of similar to the Mavericks, but not nearly as significant. I think the T-Wolves are, in terms of a 2K squad, slightly less off right after the trade deadline. They're slightly worse off after the trade deadline, but still super good. And the reason why I say that is, again, they no longer have Leonard Miller. So I'm going to scroll back real quick just to the Bulls again, which is where he was traded, where Leonard Miller ended up. And I want to just highlight him because Leonard Miller is a guy that I really, really fell in love with in terms of a 2K player, as a 2K player, just this go-around in 2K26 when I was using the Timberwolves. Look at this versatility. This guy's 6'10", 7'2" wingspan. Look at his finishing ability. I would compare him to Asa Newell a little bit for the Hawks, or I would compare those two guys to each other. Like this, Leonard Miller can shoot the ball. He's viable. Look at this defensive versatility. He can defend inside and outside. He can rebound a little bit with, his 6'10" frame and his B- athleticism. So I think 2K-wise, that's going to be a player that I miss for the Timberwolves. The dynamic really didn't change at all. Obviously, they acquired Ayo Dosunmu, who, I really like him a lot. I am an Illinois basketball fan. I really like him a lot. You may see me using Joe Ingles a little bit more just to kind of, try and replace some of the versatility that I thought Leonard Miller brought to the table. But Leonard Miller is a guy that I'm going to miss on the Timberwolves. I will tell you that much in terms of 2K. But as a whole, the Timberwolves are still a great squad to use in Play Now Online in 2K26. Blazers, really no moves here to write home about. Blazers haven't been a team that very many people have used. I haven't been using them. Kind of intriguing team. I like the Blazers. I always like their franchise, but nothing really to write home about here for Portland. And now we get to the last 2 teams. And I think that the Warriors were a team that probably was being used a lot, of course, with Steph Curry and just, how hard Steph Curry is to stop, from a defensive perspective, like playing against Steph, it's very challenging. But I absolutely love what the Warriors did, and I really like where they ended up. Somewhat in real life. We'll see how it works out with Porzingis. But I really, really, really like where the Warriors are right now in terms of 2K. Obviously, they do not have Jimmy Butler since he, tore his ACL and is going to be out for the rest of the year. But I love them adding Kristaps Porzingis. I absolutely love them. I think the Warriors are going to be a team that you see be even more popular now going forward and playing out online, for better or for worse. They may be a team that I add into the mix. But I don't think that Steph Curry has ever played with a big, to the caliber of Kristaps Porzingis. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong, whether on this Twitch live stream or in the comments once I post this to YouTube, because this will be posted to YouTube following live streaming this on Twitch. But I don't recall Steph Curry ever playing with a big along the lines of Porzingis. Obviously, Steph has been very fortunate to play with a lot of great players in his career. Of course, Kevin Durant, Clay, Draymond, peak Draymond especially, Iguodala. The Warriors have had some solid centers throughout the Steph Curry era. But getting Porzingis, I mean, that really adds a different dynamic that I don't think the Warriors have ever had. So I like the move. I like what they ended up with, again, especially in terms of 2K purposes. But beyond Steph and KP, they still have Draymond, who is able to shoot the ball and play great, versatile defense. And then they got some guys that can kind of fill out the roster in terms of Quentin Post being a stretch big, Al Horford still being there, championship caliber big who's still really good, Moses Moody, and DeAnthony Melton, and probably Gary Payton II would probably be another guy to add into the mix. I'll have to look a little bit closer at the roster. Guy Santos could be another guy to add into the mix too. He looks pretty versatile with the ability to shoot the ball, and stretch the floor. But I like what the Warriors did, and I like them better altogether. I think there's some pretty unique lineups that you can play with the Warriors right now, especially with them adding such a quality stretch big like Porzingis. So I think they're going to be even more popular. And then rounding out the bunch here is the Wizards, and like I said, we have to talk more about what the Wizards did and what they have now, because it cannot be ignored. I think they did a heck of a job. I absolutely love the Wizards. I had started to use Washington a little bit. I wanted to play with Sarr just because Sarr intrigues me a ton as another big who has kind of come up after Wemby, and someone who could possibly kind of turn into a little bit of a rival for Wemby, and just a great guy for Washington to build around. Former top pick, not long ago. He's still 20 years old. I mean, it was just last year, essentially. So obviously, once AD is healthy, that is really what elevates the Wizards in my eyes. I think that the combination of Davis and Sarr has potential to just be game-changing in terms of playing out online. Davis is hurt. I don't know when he'll be back. That's something to keep an eye on for sure, if he'll play. But I assume he will at some point, hopefully. And if not, even after the season is over, then Anthony Davis would unlock and you'd be able to use him on the Wizards. So I love what the Wizards have in terms of Davis and Sarr. I love what they can do playing those guys together. Haven't even mentioned Trae Young yet, who is hurt currently, but that just gives them a lot of dynamic abilities at the one. But if you remember, I don't know if anyone out there has seen the video that I made or recalls the video that I made on the Hawks for the best teams to use in playing out online. But one of the key points that I made about the Hawks was I really liked them outside of Trae Young, and the same goes I think for the Wizards. Obviously, if Trae Young is healthy, I would play him at the one. But the Wizards have a lot of good, versatile pieces that can kind of complement Davis and Sarr. Again, this is all contingent upon Davis getting healthy and Davis playing again in 2026. But the Wizards also have guys like Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson, Koulibaly, Justin Champagnie. They added D'Lo, Cam Whitmore once he gets back. And then I also like Will Riley, and where is he at? Anthony Gill. I like Will Riley and Anthony Gill. Anthony Gill, versatile finisher. He can stretch the floor and he can defend a couple different positions. He's a pretty solid guy. So I like what the Wizards can do. I like what they did at the deadline. I think that really elevates them, and especially once Anthony Davis, gets back healthy, if he plays. But I like what they did, and they're definitely a team to keep an eye on going forward. So that will conclude things. Before I fully end this stream, this video, I want to just again note 3 teams that I'm going to consider working into the mix going forward and playing out online, because I think a lot has changed in terms of not only in the NBA, but in play now online. So again, just to kind of recap, the 6 teams that I use, that I have been using, that I rotate through in play now online are the Spurs, the Hawks, the Bucks, the 76ers, the Mavericks, and the Timberwolves. That has been the case for the last few months in terms of my, me playing 2K26, playing out online, and that is I still feel very confident in those 6 teams after the 2026 trade deadline. However, the 3 teams that I will consider adding into the mix, this probably won't be any surprise because I touched on all 3 of them pretty in depth here, but those 3 teams that I'll consider adding into the mix will be the Utah Jazz, the Golden State Warriors, and then the Wizards. And again, with the Wizards kind of having a bit of an asterisk, because I'd like to see Davis come back and get healthy and start playing for them before I start using them. But I really like the Wizards, even without Davis. That might sound crazy to say, but I just like the Wizards. I like Sarr a lot. But yeah, those are the 3 teams that I think really improved a lot, and that I may consider working into the mix going forward and playing out online. Again, the Jazz, the Warriors, for sure the Warriors, and the Wizards. I may work those 3 teams into my best teams to use in play now online, my core teams to use just when playing play now online. So hope you enjoyed this video. This was a lot of fun, just kind of like a podcast type of video here, just talking through some changes, new dynamics following the 2026 trade deadline. So this was a lot of fun. Hope you got some value, and I will catch you next time.